through the time of worship, through the first service and everything, and through what's happened so far. It's just amazing the way God sets up the whole entire service. I'm going to talk to you today out of Esther. Okay, I'll be jumping around through the whole entire thing of Esther, and this is a verse that a message that God has been laying on my heart for a few months, and it just kept being there, and I kept going back to it. And a month ago, I was able to be at a place where I heard some kids speaking. Now, anybody ever heard of Moldova? Okay. It was in the news recently. In the middle of everything Russia's doing with Ukraine, you might not have heard that they also moved into that country. And I wouldn't have noticed it, I wouldn't even have read it, I wouldn't even have heard about it or paid much attention, except for the fact that those kids that I had a chance to see about a month ago were orphans from Moldova. And I listened to one of them as she got up on the stage. She decided to share some of what was going on and what it's like. What it's like to be in a place where there's only cold water. What it's like to be in a place where there's not enough food. Where she could sit there and look out her window and she sees happy kids jumping along with their parents behind them. And then she goes back to the life she has where she has nothing, no hope, no parents, no nothing. And just listening to her testimony and then the stuff going on with those it just breaks your heart, and you sit there bawling as I'm listening to them, and I'm listening to them talk. And it's kind of overwhelming when you think about the need and how great it is. And we're going to start working with and trying to do an orphanage, I guess, in India. And it's needed. But inside the United States, we don't see this need as much because we don't have millions of kids ending up orphans because of diseases that are wiping out all the adults. We don't have bloodshed and war the way they do in other places in the world where kids are just left abandoned. We don't have that kind of stuff. But what we do have right now, according to a National Father Initiative, is 36% of the kids in this country that are going to grow up with no father in the home. And of the ones who actually have the father in the home right now, a majority of them won't see that person through 18 years old. And it's hard on the mothers they have to take care of everything and they have to do everything. And I read 2 articles recently that said how the benefits for children of a working mother, and another article that said the 6 good things about being a working mother and stuff like that. And I realized all these kids running around with no one there for them. And I've been looking at this story of Esther. Now, just to set the background of how this story came up, there's a king. He's throwing a party for a long, long time. Okay, long party. And they've been doing drinking and stuff like that, and I don't know if any of you know this, but too much alcohol makes you stupid. Okay. If you don't believe that, ask me. I'm a delivered alcoholic. I will tell you some of my stories, and you will wonder how they actually took place in reality. Too much alcohol is not good. He suddenly gets the idea, I want my queen to come around and parade herself in front of all my friends. So he calls for her to come down, and she says no, which I guess she should have probably, but it's not kind of acceptable when it's the king who's ordering you to do it. So his friends see that, and they say, oh, this isn't good. Our wives won't listen to us. Get rid of her. And he does. Then he sobers up, I think. It says he remembered what he did to Vashti. I think he got sober at that point. And his friends are trying to talk to him, man, what should we do? Hey, here's an idea. Why don't you take all the beautiful young virgins in the provinces and bring them to here for the most insane beauty contest that ever happened. Okay? And this is where we pick up where we find out about Esther. Esther 2:7 says, Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. Okay, I can't do anything with the way the scripture reads. What we know about Esther is she was lovely, or she was beautiful and had a lovely figure, which is kind of how she ended up in the King's Insane Beauty Contest. That's what we know about her at this point. We also know that she was an orphan. Now, Mordecai took this girl and brought her into his house. He could have just gave her a roof over her head. He could have, okay, here's your food, you got a roof, you got a bed, okay, look at me, I'm so great, I took in my cousin, I'm the nicest guy in the world. But that's not what he did. It says that he took her as his own daughter. He didn't leave her as just an orphan girl or just his cousin who he's taking care of. He made this girl his daughter. And we know, if we look, God cares about orphans. Psalm 68:5, a father to the fatherless, a defender of the widows is God in his holy dwelling. James 1:27, religion that God our Father accepts as pure as faultless is this, to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted from the world. God actually cares about these orphans, about this orphan girl. Now, I listened to her story, the orphan who talked from Moldova, and she shared about hopelessness and helplessness and not having, any kind of love and all the troubles and things she's going through. And I realized that I say the same thing when I talk about my testimony in the life that I had before I knew God the Father. I wasn't an orphan, I wasn't anything like that, but I had my troubles and difficulties, and I know when I listen to it, I share those things, and then I tell you what happened when God the Father came into my life. And I know I've listened to a bunch of y'all's testimonies too. We may not be orphans, but we know what it's like where we were once without the Father. Galatians 4:4-7, but when the set time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer slave, but God's child. Since you are his child, God has made you an heir. I had to find out, Abba, Father, I had to find out. I had to search, and when I looked in the Vine's dictionary, Abba is a word framed by the lips of infants. It shows unwavering trust. Sort of like, when my kids first call me Daddy, or Dada, actually, Dada. We sang a song. And just amazing, just the words over and over again. I belong to you. Forever I belong to you. We have someone we belong to. We have a Father who loves us, cares for us. Now, there was adoption. Esther was an orphan. And then she became daughter. And Mordecai doesn't even stop there. He has affection for this girl. Esther 2:10-11. Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was and what was happening to her. I can only imagine what's going on with Esther right now. Esther is an orphan. Esther gets taken in by her cousin. Her cousin makes her his daughter. He's her father. She has this place that she stayed. She's taken away. She ends up stuck in a harem. She's separated from her father. I can only imagine what she's going through. Now, well, I'm going to take verse 11 here and do this verse before verse 10. I have a reason for that. I just want you to see what Mordecai's like. Every day he walked back and forth near the courtyard of the harem to find out how Esther was doing. I was looking at this and the words and everything. It's sort of the idea of from sunrise to sunset, Mordecai is sitting there in the courtyard of the harem. Now, he can't go in there. He's not going into the king's harem. I'm sure there's probably some guard up there, standing guard, sword, spear, some pointy thing with sharp blades or whatever, ready to kill the first person who came in there. And I could just see Mordecai, sunrise to sunset, walking back and forth. Does she need anything? Is there anything she wants? Is there anything she has to have? Okay, no. Comes back. Is she thirsty? Does she have water? Is it tap water? Is it spring water? What does she have? Okay, no. All right. Comes back again. Are they feeding her spinach? I've spent my whole life trying to get her to eat it, and she'll not eat it. What are they feeding her? Does she have enough food? No, okay. Walks, comes back. How's her bed? Is it too hard, too soft, too lumpy? Does she need a comfort, or one of those comfort beds or something like that? What does she need? And I'm sure the guard is sitting here saying, dude, don't you have anything better to do? That's my daughter in there. That is my daughter. What does she need? Mordecai's walking back and forth, sunrise to sunset. What does my daughter need? And we might feel like Esther. We might be in this situation like she was in, where we feel like, Mordecai's not around. Where is he? Where's up? Where is he? What's he doing? Maybe she didn't know he was there every single day. I don't know. Psalm 139, 7 through 12. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light will become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you and the night will shine like day, for the darkness is as light to you. We're never separated from him. God's told us he'll never leave us nor forsake us. Now, I said I would take verse 10 separately, or second, because I wanted to talk about verse 10 so we can see the affection that he had for her and how much this guy loved her, because if you look in verse 10, it says he told her to hide her nationality. And, reading through different people's views and commentaries on that, some people say, Mordecai told her to lie. He didn't tell her to lie. He didn't say, go pretend you're a princess of Persia or something like that, you're royalty. Not like, I don't know. Anybody ever watched Aladdin? Wants to have the princess, so he makes the genie poof him into a prince. He's not telling her to do that. He just said, don't tell them your nationality. Maybe that's, people think that's deceptive. But got to kind of be real with what's going on. "127 provinces. I don't know if there's one from every single province. Beautiful young virgins that are pulled there to the king. She's being given treatments of oil and perfume and everything like that so she can go in and spend the night with the king. And after that night, there's one of two options that are going to happen to her. Either she's going to have the crown placed on her head and she's going to become queen of all Persia, or she's going to the harem. And she's going to live there at the call of that nasty king for the rest of her life. All her hopes, dreams, everything that she might have had will have changed. And looking at, historical things from the Persian Empire, the expectation of the king was that he would marry from one of the royal families of Persia. So he's bringing all these girls in and going, through this process to pick her. But the expectation is he's going to pick somebody who's royalty in Persia. I know the one person he is not going to pick to put on the throne as queen, and that's going to be a Jewish captive girl. She is not going to get on that throne. If you look at the attitudes through the rest of this book that the people had towards the other side towards the Jewish people, they are not going to allow that. She is not going to sit on the throne. So Mordecai told her, don't reveal that. I've been in situations where I'm not in the best possible situation there is. And I have a couple outcomes. One might not be pleasant, one might be good. And I know I have a Father who said in Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for good, for the good of those who love. I have not been able to read this twice now. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purposes. God's a good Father, and he wants the best for us. Now, there isn't just adoption going on. There isn't just affection that he has as a father. There's action, okay? Esther 2:20. Esther kept her secret, her family background and nationality, just as Mordecai had told her to do, for she continued to follow Mordecai's instructions as she had done when he was bringing her up. Another translation says, as she had learned to do. I don't know, maybe Mordecai might have read Proverbs 22:6, start off a child in the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. Esther is obeying her father's wishes that he had taught her whole entire life. I'm kind of wondering if she might have heard the Ten Commandments, something like that along the way. Mordecai poured into her life and spoke those things into her. And now what he's done, the things that he's taught her, the things that he's shown her, we're going to see him coming out of her. I'm going to pick on Manny. I did it in the first service, so it's okay. He's pretty much used to it. I'll talk about my dad for a little bit. He's smiling. Sorry. I'll talk about my dad for a little bit. My dad got saved when I was about 10. So I had dad pre-salvation and I had dad after salvation. So when I share some of these things, take that into account. But so many things I learned from my father. The work ethic that I have, the things that I do in work, the things with my kids, things with my wife, the way I act, the way I speak, so much of it, as I'm getting older and, married, children and everything, I'm seeing more and more of my father in me as I go. I'm a third-generation person right now who is a professional driver who drives for a living every single day. My grandfather, my father, me. And then I have to go home from work and deal with all the amateurs, which kind of causes me frustration and kind of makes me yell occasionally. So I'm yelling and at the drivers and, something like my father might say, why don't you just park it? And I can also hear my mother saying, they can't hear you. Yes, I know. Other things that my dad, he's smiling already. My dad would sit there, and I find myself saying things like, "Are you born in a barn?" Because they go out through the back door, and they just open it up and leave the screen open. "Are you raised in a barn?" Why? Because my father asked me the same thing. No other reason than that. My father asked me the same thing, so I said it. Or the other one, and he doesn't even know what this if everybody else jumped off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do it too? He doesn't know what that means. I know he doesn't. And like I said, Manny, it's something we're dealing with recently. Manny's kind of big. I don't know if any of you noticed. Which draws attention from other kids in the school who kind of want to show how tough they are. And I'm trying to give Manny godly advice. I'm trying to just do the best I can to help him get through this struggle. And the words of my father keep coming to my head, and I'm not saying them, although he knows I said them, or think them because I said it in the first service. But the words of my father to me when I was a younger kid: "I do not want you starting fights. You better finish them." That was the expectation placed on me. I see the things of my father coming out because that man loved me, that man raised me, that man poured everything into my life. I even see him when I look in the mirror. How much more so my Heavenly Father? Psalm 119, 9 through 11, "How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your word. I seek you with all my heart. Do not let me stray from your commands. I have hidden your word in my heart, that I might not sin against you." And 105, "Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." The words that are in my heart and that have been placed there because I know the Father, because of the words that He has given to us. I see them coming out just like I see the things from my own father. And just one thing, like He hit them in my heart. I'm thankful that God's word, He hit on my phone. Or He hit on my dusty bookshelf. I thought about doing this, but I decided not to do it. But I could probably make a stack up to here with the Apologetical Bible, the Chronological Bible, the Archaeological Bible, the New King James, the King James, the NIV, the NIS, the New International Version, the Greek New Testament, the Spanish Bible, the one I took to war. I could probably make a pile this big, which is great. I'm glad I have the Word, and so many different translations, and I have it on my phone, but I'm glad He placed it in my heart. Now, one thing I don't know if I shared this in the first one, but as she had learned to do, occasionally I didn't actually follow what my parents taught me. You better. God occasionally, because we're children, takes the time to correct us. Hebrews 12. "Don't be discouraged when you are rebuked by Him, for whom the Lord loves, He chastens. Every son whom He receives, if you're enduring chastening, God deals with you as sons. For what son is there whom a father does not chasten?" God's done a little. I'm sure Mordecai did a little correcting of Esther. God's did a lot of correcting of me. But I'm His child. Now, I said this was action. That this part of it was action, not just His teaching, but the things He did as an example. I want to look at some of the things Mordecai did in this account. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot, told the queen, who in turn reported to the king, giving credit to Mordecai, and when the report was investigated and found to be true, 2 officials were hanged on a gallows. All of this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king. Now think about this. This guy just took his daughter, and she's going to end up in the harem, or possibly queen. And he hears 2 guys, we're going to kill the king, we don't like him, we're going to get rid of him. What does he do? Does he say, hey, you know what, I want in? Or does he say, yeah, that king's getting what he's deserving, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut? He doesn't do that. He sits there and he goes and reports it to the queen, who reports it to the king. The guys are found out. It's true. They're killed. They're dead. King saved. He was doing what was right in the duty that he had to perform. Although he did later, Esther 3:1-5, Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of high honor than all of the other nobles. Okay, and the king gave instructions that they're supposed to bow down to this guy, and Mordecai didn't. Now, looking at the life of Haman in this account, Haman didn't even notice. He kind of had to have it pointed out to him that Mordecai wasn't doing this. I don't know if he's walking with his head up in the air, not looking at the lowly people down there. Then when he's told Mordecai's not bowing to you, he could have said, kill him, get rid of him, and it would have been perfectly justified. But that's not what he does. He's like, okay, he's not bowing to me. I'm going to exterminate a whole entire people group. I'm going to wipe them out. When the king talks about he wants to reward someone, he comes up with this big plan of everything that should be done for the man who was rewarded because he assumes it's him. He brags to his family and friends about dinner at the king and queen. This is a guy that is not worthy of honor. This is a guy not worthy of reverence. He's not worthy to be bowed down to, and Mordecai didn't. Now, define that king's edict. When I said that Haman could have said kill him, Haman could have said kill him because he defied the king's edict. He could have died for that, but he stood, even when it could cost him his life. And in Esther 4:1-2, Mordecai learned of all that had been done. He tore his clothes. He finds out that they're going to be killed. He tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. He went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. Mordecai finds out about this plan of Haman's, gets in sackcloth and ashes, prays, seeks after God. And then we see him talking to Esther. He's having a conversation. And he says to Esther in 4:13-14, don't think that because you're in the king's household, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows that you've come. This is what I'm talking about, for such a time as this. This man had faith. He's talking to her, if you don't, we're going to get taken care of. So this is a man of faith. He's out there doing his duty to the king. When that king releases something that there's just no way he's going to do, he risks his life to do what was right. When he finds out that they're going to be exterminated, he gets in sackcloth and ashes, but he has faith that God is going to overcome all this. Esther, when she goes into the king's harem, when all the other ones are running off to buy everything or get whatever they can, when the king's allowed them that, she goes and said, what does the king want? What is the king like? She does the best she can at the place and the duty that she's been given. She risks her life to go in before the king. When she's getting ready for this, she prays and fasts. And she comes to the conclusion that she's going in there even if she dies. A woman of faith. I believe there's a chance that Esther succeeded in such a time as this because of Mordecai's actions in such a time as that. A guy who not just taught her, but lived a godly life out before her in everything he did. I've been looking at the life of Mordecai as a father and tying it into the Father, God the Father. He's our Father. He loves us. He's given us His word that we can put in His heart and we can see the things that He has for us. But then, John 1, 9 through 12, the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and through Him the world was made through Him. The world did not recognize Him. He came to that which was His own, and His own did not receive Him. Yet to all who received Him, to those who believed in His name, He gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision, or of a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. We have seen His glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. God sent us His Son. A couple ways to look at towards the end of this. In the first service, there was a woman named Jeanette. She sits back over there. Jeanette got saved. My mother called her up because she thought she was going crazy. She wanted to help her. She was just saved. My mom kept coming back to her with questions, and Jeanette kept answering them for a year. For a year, this woman poured into my mother's life. And because of her, my mother got saved. Because of my mom, I got saved. She led me to Christ. And I had my mom and dad. My dad, who went from what I knew before salvation to after, a man who was a truck driver who would take a Bible on the road and talk to people about God. I had my mother and father there to show me about God and to help me get here, but they're not the only ones. I could talk to you forever about Pastor Charles Gay or Pastor Anson or youth pastors like Rob Morris, like Jeff Quigley, like John Nesgard, people from the church who were just wanting to disciple people like Linda Alvarez and Elisa mentioned, who poured into my life, and they'd studied the Word and got it into me. I can go through name after name after name of those who have sat there and said, you know what, I want to pour into your life. I want to see you get to where you are. A bunch of people who, in such a time as that, gave me good, godly examples to follow so that I can be doing what I'm doing for such a time as this. I'm thankful for every one of them. That story that I told about the orphan girl, there's the rest of the story. Okay? There's a man from Scotland who went to that place who started working in the orphanages. He saw the need. One time there were 16, I think he said 16 girls who were going out. He could only help 3. He's having to choose how to help those 3. Which 3? Decided to start making houses. Stella's house 1, 2, 3, 4. Simon's house for the guys. Took over a whole entire orphanage now. He wants to run every orphanage in that country. He wants to build houses so that no kid who is phased out at 16 years old, which is what happens to them, is outside of a home, that they get their education, that they have a chance to survive, because if they don't, the results are horrible. When those kids at 16, June 1st, on the year of their 16th birthday, are sent out of those orphanages, they are given like $20 in a bus ticket to the center of town, which is where the sex traffickers are. And that's their life. This man, some things he said. This is what I face today. It's about more than saving them from the trafficking. It's about more than putting a roof over their heads or showing them love. It's about showing them love, showing them that there's a reason I love them. The reason I love them is because Jesus first loved me, showing them that he loves them too. These girls are saved, not from hell on earth, but from eternally. I listened to that young girl who talked about all the hopelessness and everything she felt. She knows Christ is her Savior. She's had this because of this man who was willing to pour into her life. She's going to go to Bible college. She wants to come back, and she wants to minister to the orphans there in that place, and she wants to see lives transformed because this man said, I'm going to pour into your life. I'm going to be like a Mordecai to you, and she's going to be like an Esther. She's going to do great things in that country, and then he's going to go on and continue with the other things that he's doing. I love the end of Esther. It's actually all about Esther, but at the end we find out about Mordecai. Esther became queen. Esther saved her people. Esther did all these kind of things. But Mordecai became second to the king, wrote the edict that protected the people, signed it with the king's ring, or sealed it with the king's ring to protect all the Jewish people. She became queen. He became second in command. I don't know where you are today. I don't know if there's any of you all out here right now. Maybe you don't know the Father. If there's anybody here and you don't have that kind of relationship, I'd love to help you with that. Or you can talk to my wife back there, Lori, or you could talk to Pastor Anson or any of the pastoral staff, or any of the elders who are here, if there's anybody here who doesn't know the Father. And some of you out there, you might be like an Esther. You have a God that loves you, and you know what? You have people here who, like the ones who went before me and helped me and got me to where I am, are going to be willing to take you. Especially there's some of you younger ones over here. And I thank God for so many people that are placed there to help and pray for them. But you may just be Mordecai. Can you find one? I believe we answered and went up to the altar after that guy, I wish I could remember names better, who came just recently, who was a missionary, and said, can you just reach one? Can you be a Mordecai? And this generation, this broken generation we sung about, so desperately needs it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to